Hey, there we go. 3 participants, 5 participants, 10 participants. No, we're not there yet.
Okay.
I overestimated. Hey guys, how's it going? Let me pull up my titular launch PowerPoint, and then we'll go off the rails real quick, as
Perfect.
as is usual CloudRadial tradition. Katrina, you're the only person I ever hear or speak to ever. Can you see my PowerPoint?
I can.
Sweet. Oh, good. All right, everybody. Happy American Monday, but technically Tuesday, since we all had American Day off yesterday. And Canada had day off last week. What's next? England next week? That's
That's
all
too
the
much
banter.
time off.
That's all the banter I have. I think I'm out of banter. Short banter run. Anyways, hi guys. I think I'll go ahead and get started since we started a hair late. Anyways, I'm Ricky Cecchini. I'm the VP of Product here at CloudRadial, and with me today is Katrina Lee. Are you a director of
Director
marketing? I can't remember.
of content and design.
Of content and design. But
It's an obscure title. I'm surprised. I'm not surprised it didn't roll off the tongue. It's okay.
she does stuff that helps us make money. And hopefully this will help you make money too. And today we're talking about how to land new clients using CloudRadial. If you've ever looked at CloudRadial, I'll explain what it is in a second, which is cool. If you've never looked at CloudRadial, I'll explain what it is in a second, which is cool. But specifically, we're focusing on kind of the point of prospecting and how to enhance the prospecting to client experience, right? And we're going to talk about not just one specific thing or one specific feature or just trying to sell your product, but really how you can enhance the process of just the sales experience from your prospect's perspective. We're really big on that. So if you've never seen CloudRadial or you need a quick refresher, CloudRadial is kind of used as a umbrella brand of products, but our main kind of flagship and what you'll probably see out there if you're not super familiar is the CSA, or if you want me to keep it super simple, it's client portal, really. And what we aim to do is we're trying to take that IT service delivery client success, put it in a streamlined fashion. So ultimately what happens is you do your technologying and your clients do the clienting, and they have a nice go-between for both of you guys, right? And that client portal is going to help us translate everything from your day-to-day operations like ticketing, maybe you've got QBRs, all the way to like onboarding and compliance and so on and so forth. So there's a lot to CloudRadial. Again, this webinar is not focused on a demo of what CloudRadial can do and how it all works. It's specifically focused on how you can take something like a CloudRadial with a nice portal experience and use that in a really effective way for sales presentations to get some tangible benefits out of the sales process. So let's talk about what we're trying to solve, how we're trying to solve it, and how we can even dive into it. So if you've never seen one of these webinars with me, I hate PowerPoints, which is mine, they're usually 5, 6 slides, and this is no different because I like to
And
show.
I make those PowerPoints.
You do make those PowerPoints, which is awkward. I think this is the first time I've had somebody who actually makes the PowerPoints, and like, yeah, sorry.
It's fine.
Yeah,
It's fine. We're here to show a product, not a PowerPoint. It's
that's
okay.
right. But again, even though I'm the VP of product and I work at CloudRadial, I like to try to make this open-ended and valuable. So if you can't, take anything away from CloudRadial, at least think about this from your own perspective to see how you can enhance your own operations. Not everything I'm going to say is specifically like you have to have CloudRadial to do it. So hopefully you get some value out of it no matter what. Okay, so here's a couple of top challenges. I'm not going to say every challenge from every MSP because there's a lot of them. I want to clarify before I go into any of these in the first place where I come from and why I think this is even my place to speak. We have over 1,000 MSPs using CloudRadial today, which is cool. And I talk to a lot of them, and I talk to a lot of them about every stage of the client management, right? From the sales at the very beginning to the prospect, all the way down to ongoing everything from retention to upsells and QBRs and just showing value. So when I talk to people, a mix of research, talking to people, first party, third party, you name it, a lot of stuff, these come up a lot from every size MSPs. One of the biggest ones is differentiation, obviously. Again, you're probably going to be pretty familiar with any of these if you've ever even come up to a prospect conversation. Differentiation is really big because obviously for an end user or a client or a prospect, really, it's hard for them to discern what it really means from one MSP to another when they say 24/7 support versus proactive support versus this versus that. So when a client doesn't really understand what the offering is, obviously, like we have this problem with MSPs or IT service providers in general, it doesn't really matter. even from cybersecurity experts to your basic just help desk support, because we use the same language in every MSP and every vendor, and everybody just kind of says the same words over and over again differently, right? Managed service doesn't really say anything about what you actually render in that managed service. So when it comes down to sales process, having like a seat price be put in front of a client or a prospect rather, is really tough, right? Because one person's managed service might be $50 a seat or something really, really low. Another one might be 300, but on paper and when you're not actively talking to them, it looks the same. So differentiation is really, really big because if you don't differentiate, you don't clarify exactly what you do and why you do it and why you're better at it or why you're a lower price option or whatever, it's just really hard. So it's kind of a race to the bottom. Technical jargon obviously goes hand in hand with that. People don't like paying for stuff they don't understand. So it's also difficult for you to sell these services and especially we'll talk a little bit about this, not the focus of this webinar, but it bleeds in how you can eventually get up to talking about game plans for growth, right? With your prospects to clients, like what does their journey look like? Well, again, if they don't understand what you're offering them from the get-go and you're talking about again, cybersecurity, digital transformation, all really cool things, but you need to show them how it builds up. So, how do you translate that into something tangible? Transparency is inherent, right? I'm not going to go through all these and read you like a big paragraph for each one, but the gist is, again, kind of like the jargon. If they don't really see what they're paying for, it's tough to stomach to continue to pay for it. And especially everyone knows the IT trap. If you do a really good job, nobody hears from you, and why are we paying you? And if they have a lot of work to do and there's a lot of problems, then why are we paying you, right? Because we have so many problems. So that transparency and proving that actions are taking place and they can see stuff has to hit the delicate balance of being able to showcase to a client uh, exactly what you're offering without overwhelming them, without putting stuff in their face or interrupting their workflow. So we'll talk about how that even factors into the sales presentation to begin with. And then a couple other quick ones. Price versus value, kind of similar to the jargon thing in the sense that, like, if you don't really know what you're paying for and you just have a line item contract, then it's not super valuable. So it's a little bit of talking about the challenges you aim to solve in the prospecting to the sales part, showcasing that, and then making sure that a month, 6 months, 1 year down the line, you can look back and say, you had XYZ challenge. Either we've solved it or we're on the way to solving it and what the process is like. And then you can justify that with value. And then lastly, stop being boring, right? We all want to do it. I'm not saying here's a one-trick pony to do it, but interactivity is a huge part of it, right? So a lot of times vendors these days uh, do stuff like what I'm doing, where we'll showcase some product stuff, we'll take questions or whatever. Spoiler alert, because it works. And if it works for us, I guarantee you it works for you guys. Because we see a lot of MSPs kind of swapping to this more SaaS-y approach where if you can kind of showcase what they're going to get when they work with you, it's a lot less wooden and it's a lot more modern, just as far as technology goes. And we're going to talk about how that actually tangibly translates. So there's a lot of sales challenges that MSPs and IT service providers face, and there's not really a silver bullet that fixes all of them. But what we found is that having a client portal to serve as a base of operations, really a shared space between them, if not a direct resolution to some of these, can at least facilitate greatly the resolution to the rest of them. So when we're talking about how we solve these things at scale, we're talking about uh, specifically reducing overall close times. We're going to talk about how that happens and why that happens, how to charge higher prices to speak to that value proposition. And we're going to talk about next steps, right? Because obviously this webinar is focused on how to improve and how to tangibly set up and look nice for a sale. But once you get that sale, obviously it being a client portal, you are not going to just jettison it and ditch it and say like, okay, that did its part, right? It's about taking a tool and making the most of it and kind of stretching it and using it in a way that affects multiple teams, right? From sales to marketing to service to project management, account management, all that stuff, really kind of building that client persona around it to get the most of it. So really it's like the fundamental thing I think we can all take away from here, which again, we'll talk about how, and I want you to think in your own terms, is people, companies, everybody wants to work with MSPs that are easy to work with. And something that is anecdotal to me, but I think everyone can empathize with is that like, we talk about a lot of MSPs talk about their service delivery and whatnot. It kind of bleeds into even the prospecting and the sales bit going like you're promising how good you are and everything else. But the reality is that like a lot of times you can be technically adept and good and you name it, really, really skilled, and your reviews are out of the chart, off the charts, out of this world. I mix those two bad. But if you're difficult to work with, if your process is clunky and everything, it's just that much harder. It's another objection to get over. So we're going to take this off the PowerPoint. We're going to start talking about how to actually do some stuff in CloudRadial that hopefully will show you what CloudRadial can do and also give you some ideas. And if at any point, this is where Katrina comes in handy, I like to ramble, as you probably can already tell, but Katrina is there to help kind of route questions because I'm going to kind of walk through a couple of the key steps, walk through what's worked for our partners, uh, again, give you some ideas for innovation. If at any point you guys have questions, if there's something that comes up, throw it in the Q&A, and then Katrina can always route those to me, if not answer them directly, and we'll just go that way. So again, super casual, super simple. We just want to talk about how we can get these prospects to land easier with CloudRadial. So that being said, let's get off the PowerPoint, shall we? All right. So I want to talk about, before we go into CloudRadial stuff, and I'm going to show some tangible examples, let's talk about some timelines. And yes, I used AI. Ha, of course I did. But at the same time, I did write the stuff. So the specific things here is a pretty generic traditional approach, and we're talking about where having a client portal, CloudRadial, can really help. So again, I'm not going to read all these things out loud to you, and this will be recorded, so this is going to get posted on YouTube and sent to you as well if you've signed up or whether you're on this webinar right now. But the gist is that like initially having that client portal experience and having that be interactive is a really good way to lower the close times. Stuff that happens at the very, very beginning of the sales cycle. So anything from irrelevant generic marketing materials like IT saves time, statements that are true, but at the same time don't really have a lot of meat, don't have a lot of stuff to back them up, are difficult to showcase. So even from the very, very beginning of like how you engage with the prospect, right, can be shortened when you have something tangible to show. So the first step we're going to do inside of CloudRadial is I'm going to show you how to spin up a company. We're going to pretend like this is a real session with real prospects and real clients. So let's say I have until 12 Central, which is about 45 minutes from now, to showcase that. How can we take that? How can we differentiate? And how can we brand it to make it look personal and make it look really nice and professional? So if we can do that, that gives everything from the very, very beginning a nice professional way to approach the prospect. And that's better than, typically a stack of papers. Then when we get to qualification and discovery, we're going to talk about not necessarily how to just use CloudRadial to be your only thing, but how to integrate tools, processes, other things you may already have, because you may have some stuff you like. How can you incorporate that in a way that makes sense, that tells a good story, that makes it easy both for you and a prospect to keep track of stuff? We're talking about what CloudRadial can do for that too. So how to streamline that dramatically, all the way down to the proposal, right? So we don't do proposal creation specifically, but at the same time, the proposal includes their own stuff. So it's kind of like being able to showcase exactly what they're getting and letting them test drive it before they sign anything, which is really nice for risk reduction, right? People know exactly what they're going to be getting with you. There's a lot of transparency. It's a lot easier. So again, that proposal becomes a lot faster because they can visualize stuff, all the way down to objections and all the way down to closing decisions, and how tangibly you can get a higher close rate in general if you have these set steps. Now, again, I'd love to lie and be like, yeah, this is the only, you can only do this with CloudRadial. But the reality is, if you incorporate a really strong process that incorporates the prospect and kind of engages them back and forth, it's going to be super, super good for your close rates. So all that being said, let's look at what this actually looks like. So we know that there is potentially, or theoretically, right, as I'm saying it, a lot of benefits to it. So what that actually looks like in CloudRadial is honestly pretty simple, and that's what we like. So first things first, there's a lot to look at on this screen, I'm aware, and if you've never seen CloudRadial, you're probably like, whoa, there's a lot to look at on this screen. But what we're really focusing on here is the concept that CloudRadial is a third-party client portal. So you may, if you already use a PSA, for example, you may be familiar that pretty much every PSA, like whether it's ConnectWise or Autotask or Halo or whatever, has a client portal experience. The reason that people come to us, or why we exist in the first place, is, well, first of all, it's like we can spin something up that doesn't necessarily exist in your PSA. And that's especially important for salespeople with prospecting, right? Because you don't have their contact info, you don't have M365 information, you don't really have much. So you can't really load them into a PSA or CRM because there's not much to go off of there. And secondly, right, aside from that major problem, you've also got the issue that If you want to change your tools around or you want to switch from one vendor to another, your client experience would go out the door every time you change the experience, right? So if you're using ConnectWise's portal and you switch to Autotask, you got to rejigger everything. So having an agnostic thing allows you to swap your tool set without changing any of your processes, which is a safer bet in the long run, which is why I'm given this PowerPoint, right? This presentation. So conceptually, what happens is when you get CloudRadial, you're able to spin up a portal per company, right? Per company you support or however many you want, right? Picking the users and whatnot. And traditionally, that makes a ton of sense, right? So in this theoretical example, my MSP is called Azure Technology. I've got all of these other companies loaded in, and it doesn't really matter for the sake of this webinar, but this is connected to ConnectWise. Why this is important is because when you typically add a company into CloudRadial and you're really doing it for real, and this is a client of yours, not a prospect, when you go to add a company, one of the first things that CloudRadial is going to ask you is, who are they, right? What's their PSA information? What's their Microsoft information? The reason we ask that is because that's where we're getting our users and their data and blah, 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 blah. That's not the goal during this webinar, right? The goal during this webinar is to take prospects and make them understand how you work with them and make them have a good experience. So these things are basically irrelevant. So what can we do and how do people do it? Well, if you want to provide a nice experience and give them a really good idea of what it's like to work with, consider this. If you get CloudRadial and you want to showcase something and look very nice and professional and put together, let's just go ahead and do a theoretical Acme MSP, or actually, no, not MSP, Acme Prospect Co. Cool. So now we've got a theoretical company with essentially no data attached. You don't need to know really any of this stuff. I'm going to do this in order of what most MSPs that play around with CloudRadial do. I'm not reading any of this stuff because it doesn't really matter. I'm just going to hit submit. So what I've asked CloudRadial to do right now is to create me a company that is going to basically get populated with content. Content in CloudRadial terms is like this stuff, right? So you've got like courses and you've got support tickets and stuff that CloudRadial is preloaded with. Why that's important is because whenever we go back to our client list, right, we've added the Acme prospect code with 0 users and systems and stuff, just like any other client. When we go into this company, we're going to go ahead and impersonate an administrator. What I've already stalled and given CloudRadial about a minute to do is to pre-populate this and publish all this data. So right off the bat, in 60 seconds, I've got a functional client portal that I can use both for my sales presentation and also have them walk through it. So even without really knowing what I'm doing, I'll go back here and do another thing. Acme Prospect Co. We're going to impersonate. I already did administrator. That's my tab I just opened, and a user as well. The reason I do the users on these webinars is to show fewer features so I don't overwhelm everybody. And okay, so now what we've got is we've got a company that has a couple of tabs. It's got, hey, look at the account manager at the top. It's got some bookmarks. It's got some support tickets and forms for them to fill out. And it's even got some training preloaded in there just like that. What have I done? Well, again, in about 60 seconds, I've proven and shown to ourselves and soon to the prospect that I can deliver a scalable client experience that puts them kind of in command. Now, CloudRadial is really, really modular and fully customizable, which means that like what specifically populates is up to you, right? Again, we have our stock stuff, our default loadout, but if you want to put in custom stuff, or if you're really trying to wow a client, if you want to put anything fancy, right? Depends on how much work you're willing to put in or want to put in or need to put in for this prospect. Maybe you want to go ahead and add a couple extra things. Maybe you want to go add a couple specific line of business apps to really paint the picture of what it would look like to work with you. And the goal here is to show these prospects that working with you may not be the cheapest option. In fact, we'd prefer if it wasn't the cheapest option because we want you to make some money. But really, what it's like is to say that working with you is super straightforward. The goal to capture here is that you are both able to deliver this really good experience for a client and also customize it to their needs. If you could do those two things, then the client or prospect will walk away going, I know exactly what it's like to work with them. So the big goal is to get an idea in their head before they sign a contract so they already feel that connection with you. And I know it's usually a negative connotation, but in car sales, this is the equivalent of getting someone to walk on the lot and get in the car and play with the stuff and move the steering wheel and stuff. People form that connection. They start envisioning themselves working with you and how it all kind of comes together. What we're looking at now is what like an end user would see. So traditionally, even though I'm showing this to you guys, I'm fully aware this is probably not going to close the deal, right? Because really what this does is you're probably talking to a decision maker or maybe a group of people, depending on how the sale goes, and they're going to have some requirements and some understandings for you. So this is nice for an end user, but typically what the point of contact wants to see is the stuff that is more strategic. So let's go to this other tab. So you can see now why I do that impersonate user versus administrator, because all these other tabs pop up. Again, when I usually talk to salespeople that are using this for prospecting or marketing people that want to incorporate this inside of like a presentation, because a lot of MSPs do that. They say like, we do this, there's this assessment from this other third-party tool. Oh, and we have a fantastic client experience. They want to know what this thing is going to get them because realistically, you're also going to have to be aware that most people aren't going to be logging into the portal every single day all the time. But much like one of those apps that you may have from booking airlines to your bank app to whatever, it's really, really nice for them to know that when they want to know their state of their technology or when they want to get to their training or whatever, they have a really easy and selected go-to. The stuff that can be more interesting for them is the reporting bits. We're going to talk about those in just a second, but I'm going to build a story. So the story I want to tell right now is that we've spun up a portal. It doesn't really look like anything except for Acme Prospect Co. So can we go a little bit further, right? Again, I'm trying to wow this prospect and we're going to pretend like I'm actually doing this in the next 35 minutes. So what does that mean? Well, I've spun up the company and we'll talk about all these other tabs, but first off, like I want to make it feel better for them. So right off the bat, one of the things you can do that increases that connection and really simplifies that emotional sale is when we go into that Acme Prospect Co. Like I said, it takes 2 seconds to spin up, which is no big deal. But if you want to take the extra bit and make it feel more like them and you're trying to impress them to show them that you really got some stuff, throw some custom branding on there. It's super easy in CloudRadial, right? Let's go to branding. Let's say, yeah. And what this will do is instead of just having your logo at the top and their name, just like Acme Co., if you want, we can start to get kind of cool with it, right? So maybe I want to do a dark theme for them. And maybe I want to, I don't know, I'll change their title bar color to something gray, just pick a random gray. And maybe I want to put their logo. So I'm going to throw a logo in, right? There's a lot of tools that can do this. I'm an animal, so I just went to Google and found a logo for Acme MSP, and that's what I'm going to use. So let's go find that. Let's go throw that in there. And then this is going to start making it feel like it's theirs. So that way it doesn't feel or look like you just found a portal and you went, ah, here you go. This is the stuff that actually makes the difference. So I've uploaded it. Again, I'm doing this to show you guys that it doesn't take much longer. We can customize some stuff, but again, that's not really the point of this. The point is by adding just a logo and by changing just a little sidebar there, when I refresh this, it should look, hey, look, it's already branded to them, right? So now if I walk into a presentation, I'm having this or I'm having this be part of it, in about 15 seconds, right, I've really looked like I have created something that they can utilize and interact with. The next step, and we're promised we're going to get into reports, the stuff that typically really sells that transparency and that visibility and that trust in you and your prospect is loading people up here, right? Logistically, when I talk to salespeople and they try to figure out like how can I incorporate this, or again, it may not be the primary focus, but it is a really nice crown jewel in the presentation. They talk about how to actually get their prospects in here to play with this and see it, because that's half the power, right? If you can get the prospect to agree that they want to click around and feel it out, that's really strong. I don't have users in here, so I have no way of, like with a PSA, your contacts would be imported, and that's how they would log in because we'd know who it is. I don't have that with a prospect. So super simple. What our MSPs do today is if there's a prospect that wants to get in, let's say it's just a point of contact or maybe a couple people, we're just going to manually mosey on over to usage users, and we're just going to add them in manually. And you can do this in CloudRadial till the cows come home. It's not how the system was designed to work for clients, but for prospects, this works just fine because we can come in here, we can add the user, right? So I'm going to say Ricky at cloudradial.com. That's me, Ricky C. All right. Now what happens? So now I can make this person a administrator in this portal, and then essentially what I've just done is I've added them in. All I have to do now to get them to play around is I can do what I'm doing on this webinar right now, right? As a part of the presentation, as a part of the discussion, I can share my screen and walk them through it and talk about what it would look like and where all the reports would go and so on and so forth. Or in additionally, I can add them in like I've just done. And now what'll happen is I just have to give them the URL to my portal. Mine is really ugly, azure.tech.us.cloudradial.com, but if you actually get CloudRadial, then you can have it be portal.yourmsp.com or whatever. Have them log in, have them play around, and they would have the same access as you, minus the administrator controls. So that way, again, from branding to adding a couple users, is it manual? It is manual. There's not a lot we can do with that, but at the very least, it won't be super painful. And then, as you'll see when we keep going with this presentation, you can convert this like theoretical prospect portal into something that you can use for your actual clients really easily down the line. So in addition to showing all those things and proving the value and kind of using this as a repository for the greater sales presentation, it's really easy to transition this and to hand this off for implementation, for onboarding. The reason that's super, super nice is because that's another thing. We just talked about it, I want to say it was 2 weeks ago, maybe, Katrina, the onboarding webinar.
Yep.
But we talk about that, and that's a huge problem that MSPs have, which is once you do make the sale, does the prospect know what to expect? Do they know where to go? If you can handle this at the very beginning, the prospecting part, that part becomes a lot easier. So it's not just helping you close stuff, it's helping you scale things up later. I digress. I'll show you how. So at this point, all I've done is show you guys that there's a portal, you can customize it, you can add a user in there. What is going to actually make the MSP stand out, right? How do we sell this thing to an end user, especially a point of contact, and show them that there's value? Because I work here, but I know it's not going to be bookmarks, right? Bookmarks are cool, but what else is there? The stuff that an MSP would want to show, especially during prospecting, varies dramatically. Most MSPs we work with, and I'm sure a lot of people on this call too, do things like, again, you may have everything from discovery tools, right? There's a lot of really good discovery tools that if you're on site, maybe they let you put some stuff in on their computers or in their network as like a discovery, show some vulnerabilities. Maybe not. Maybe they have third-party stuff. Maybe they're a referral. So, right, they might have some conceptual things. Maybe you have a completely homemade process. Doesn't really matter. The point is you want to be able to take all the things that you may already be doing and put them in one place. And if you can put them inside of your client portal and have that be kind of your meeting point between yourselves and them during the prospecting bit, you're setting yourself up for a super, super easy and scalable client experience. The nature of those things varies dramatically. So I'll show you exactly why I'm like, where do you start with this thing? Number one, I'll go back to my actual company. So this is, again, my real deal Azure technology with real clients and stuff. This is like the end point of when they're actually implemented and whatnot. We can look at something like the infrastructure tab, and on like a day-to-day vision of CloudRadial, you can install an agent of CloudRadial's making. This is not an RMM on the machines. Why would you want to do this? Well, really what we're trying to do when we're actually clients is trying to take technical data, like we'll just pick like, I don't know, this Aaron's computer here, trying to take a lot of raw information that doesn't make a lot of sense. Remember, I said jargon kills the deal, or at least doesn't really help it. And we don't like jargon, but at the same time, a lot of stuff from the serial to the CPU to whatever, whatever, whatever is what you bring to the prospect, right? And say there's an opportunity here to improve your services. But a lot of MSPs get lost in the sauce showing stuff like this, right? Ultimately, what we want to do is we want to make the MSP understand, sorry, you're the MSP, make the client understand that we can take this stuff and make something simple of it. So this technical stuff that everybody here probably understands can get translated into something like this. And this is what is really effective, both in showcasing opportunities or trying to figure out where we begin when we start working with the client or the prospect in fixing and kind of tracking the improvement. So that way they get a really easy, tangible view saying you were in the red, right? Kind of like what we're seeing here. We're going to take you to the green. Here's the action plan. Here's the services required. We never let them forget what they're paying for and why they're paying for it and why they're paying you, right? So there's a mix of all these things to be shown as early as the prospecting stage. But again, when I am a know nothing prospect, right? And I don't mean that in a derogatory way. I mean, like literally, they've never heard of you. They get launched into a portal and they're clicking around. Obviously, you're not going to have access to their M365. You probably won't have them loaded in your PSA, and they probably won't have any endpoints. Plus, what if you bring that in from something else, right? Again, CloudRadial's position is you don't need to necessarily have that come from us, but we want to showcase it in here. So I'll show you two different things we can do real quick. Number one is that agent, if that interests you and you want to kind of use those policies. That was that red, yellow, green. How are you doing on here, here, and here? That's super easy. So here's how that looks like logistically. If you've got a prospect that is either open to you doing this, right? Because again, security measures, some people are cool with this, some people are not. I'm just throwing some stuff out here that I've seen our clients do. I can go into Acme Prospect Code from this client list and I can grab a URL to that agent and I can basically give it to them, right? So in this case, what I'm doing right now in a separate window is I'm handing that off to a computer that I have off the right. There's a laptop over here on my right. And I'm going to download this agent and I'm going to have it try to report in the data in the next, 60 seconds or so. Again, depending on if your prospect lets you do this, cool. They may or may not, because I know a lot of MSPs struggle with letting anybody put anything on anything. But this is specifically on a computer, not a network. This is not asking for write capabilities. This is literally just a reporting thing. So as a part of the sales presentation, CloudRadial's agent is something that you can use to visualize to help them understand what you're going to be showing them. So I've just added it on there. I think it's done. If I refresh this, it should show up here in a second. Let's see. There we go. It went away now. Should take a second to report in. Let's double check. Hey, there we go. Republicans, my gaming computer just showed up right here. Cool. So now I've got some stats on there. You can see where I am physically. Don't tell anybody. I'm near Trader Joe's. It's nice. And then you've got configuration stuff and so on and so forth. So again, is this going to seal the deal? Probably not. But if you're walking into a engagement that there is a co-managed partnership, right? You're talking about what we can do from a can you show me some inventory? Just this has value because now you're skipping the part where having somebody in-house or if they're working with another provider, sharing access or whatever, you can say like, hey, we'll give you a nice middle ground of the portal. We'll let you figure out, who's got what, you kind of from inventory to what to do with it, and that has value. If you can get to that stage, then we can also go down to those policies that I mentioned. These scan and refresh every single day, but I don't even need to do that. I can do it manually. So now in the meeting, in 2 seconds, I've ran all my policies against my computer, and in a second, this is going to light up like a Christmas tree. And in about 15 seconds, I can show you that we went from everything's good to Ricky's computer came on and it went, wait a minute, here's all this stuff. I know for a fact my OS is out of date. I don't have any third-party AV. I'm storing stuff in weird places. I don't have an encrypted hard drive. The point is not to bombard the prospect with like, oh my God, before me, you were a disaster, although they sometimes are. The point here is to say there are things we can work on, and this is how we're going to be tracking. And I have a set of rules. All these things, these policies, we did a webinar on this as well, can be customized to be exactly what you want to look for. But this is a fast way to basically filter through saying, if I found this on one machine and you have 80, 100, 500, right? Servers and endpoints and so on and so forth. Imagine what we could do together if we can track it, you can see it and it's mutual, right? So what we've done here at a high level is in a couple of seconds of technicality, we've taken that value that I mentioned, removed the jargon, and turned it into something that is really tangible and easy for them to understand and work on. Now, all this under the umbrella, I said there's two methods. Sometimes people look at this and they go, that'll work. I'm talking about you guys, right? They'll say, yep, I can work with that. Awesome. And then sometimes I work with people that say, hey, I'm a compliance officer at so and so, and there's no way in hell anyone's letting me put an agent on a machine and so on and so forth. So maybe, again, I'm not here to tell you how to do your job as far as scanning and prospecting with any other tool. But what I can tell you is that stuff has a ton of value for the client. So what do we do in those cases? If you've got third-party stuff where you say phooey to this stuff and you don't want to do any of that, that's also okay. There's a spot under compliance and reports, which is just under the policy section that I'm on right now, that is meant for that. What we can do with this thing, it's super simple. I'm not going to act like this is rocket science, is as the MSP, preparing this thing, is you go through the engagement, right? I know I brought up that big fancy, like, here's all the stuff that's happening. Between these weeks, between this stuff, if you've got a place or repository to keep adding stuff, then what you can do is even before you've shown the client or potential client like what you're going to do for them, whether it's assessments or compliance reports or network discovery, you can pre-populate their portal with those third-party reports. So that actually just looks like me adding a folder, adding an archive. I've already got global ones that I can already chuck stuff into, but let's say I've got like, again, we're going to add a new one called network discovery reports. Cool. I can set retention policies. I don't really do that because it's not the point of this thing, but you can do some fancy stuff. But the gist is I've created a folder, right? And then now what I can do with that folder is if I go through and I run a network discovery, if I go through and run a compliance assessment, if I go through and run whatever I want, any kind of folder, I can just start chucking reports in here. And that fits that middle ground that I mentioned earlier, which is I don't want to bombard the prospect and say, check this out, check this out, check this out, check this out. Oh my God. I want to get it to a sweet spot that when I have a conversation, wherever you guys see fit in your sales cycle, I can take them to a place, go, you imagine what it's like to work with you. I can show you everything from the bookmarks to the tickets you can submit to the computers that you have for inventory, all the way down to even the reports that we have. So when it comes to this stuff, again, whether you want to add them in manually, each one of these things you can even email, right? So each one of these things has its own individual email address and even APIs that you can grab and pull stuff from this thing. All that works really nicely when you put it all together because now what you've done is for a prospect and you say, here's what it's like to work with you. You've basically, in my car analogy, I know my analogies are out of the world. I'm just, so many analogies all the time. Sorry. Katrina's like, yeah, shut up with the analogies. I get it. Sorry. But
You'll
you've
get one of them right, won't you?
probably not. Anyways, you basically have preloaded everything and you've made it like you have this nice car, they've touched it, it's got their name on it, it's got their everything all over the place. It really feels like it's their stuff. So not only have you made it really easy to understand what it's like to work with you, you've also made it super, super easy for them to pick up and work with you, right? So if they go, well, what would it look like to onboard you? You've taken care of something that people don't think about. Most people don't think about during the prospecting, which is if I put pen to paper or DocuSign or whatever you use, how fast will you start delivering the things that you said you would do or that you found or whatever, right? If everything is theory and it takes 12 weeks to close this prospect and you've talked about it, and then you have another 12 weeks or more, whatever it is, to implement those things, it's going to be super long. So not only does this shorten the close, it shortens the implementation because if you can start stacking up stuff like what I showed, the policies from us or third-party reports, whatever, you have a benchmark built into the same portal that they're going to be using today and a year from now, which means that even as we think really far forward for your other teams, or if you're a smaller company, maybe you're doing this, to be able to say, hey, at the beginning, we said we would do X, Y, and Z. Here's where we were at the beginning. It's logged, it's stated, whatever. Here's where we are today. Have we accomplished all this stuff? It's kind of that mutual promise, right? We say that like, MSPs and their clients really want to work together. And the whole concept of a partnership is that they're going back and forth. So this is where I say, not as CloudRadial, but just as a guy who works with a bunch of MSPs, it is in your best interest, one way or another, to kind of document and facilitate those promises, those expectations at the beginning, so nothing shady happens with your client down the line. Because I've heard too many horror stories of people saying, that's not what we asked for, we didn't want that, you didn't deliver, so and so. If you can log that, have that be available, you got nothing to hide. So when we get down to even the very last bit, and I'll go through some technicalities that come up all the time because I like to be very realistic on these webinars. You get into, okay, so we've got, again, these cute things, and you can throw these together on the fly, even down to like their plan, right? So when I work with a brand new company, when I work with a prospect, I'm not really at the QBR or trying to upsell them stage, but it is nice for them to understand the breadth of what you can do and what you are presenting to them today. So if I'm talking to, let's keep this super small, right? I have a small MSP. I'm trying to render some managed services for a client. Okay, we're going to say that we've already done that. That would be out the gate. We're doing that, right? CloudRadial's planner is something super simple that in the same vein, in the same conversation, if they click around and you want to stage this, it should take you really no more than an hour to just kind of gussy stuff up. And you can basically out the gate, right? In addition to proposals and PDFs and whatever you may have of like, legalese and technicality, having that easy, simple reminder like this going, by the way, we're going to talk about doing that. We'd love to do some M365 discussions in Q3, and then whatever, we're going to talk about security there. Plus anything else you want to do, maybe manually, right? You want to write in some notes in here, and maybe you want to highlight even other stuff you found in the portal. Again, the goal here is not to show you guys the demo of how to do this, but it's to say you can. So if you want to say, hey, this third-party AV thing may be a thing we want to look at as a whole, let's throw that on the planner on the fly. So
Ricky, this might be a relevant question. I just got one in here
sure,
asking if we can automate like putting various tools into the reports, for example, VoIP or like call center reports.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good question. Like a lot of times, like I'm assuming the asker was probably saying like, can we get those things? A lot of times those reports get spat out by the system on a typical basis, like, weekly, monthly, whatever, whatever. The reporting that I see 99% of the time is those automatic reports just literally set the email reporting to the email address, right? Sorry, I know I'm going all over the place here. That email address that I showed within a specific folder right here would be what you set. So instead of sending it to, so and so point of contact, you could do that. If that system doesn't have that recurring sending, which again, most of them do, but there are cases that they don't, that would be where our API comes in. So it's like there can always be something you could spin up super simply. I'm not much of an API guy, but I can look into it and tell you how to take something from one place, download it, send it to another, and then have it either create the folder, send the report, or both. So both of those, there's a ton of instances where people want to just automate the ingestion of data. Even after they become clients, that's super common. So that's a good question. Anything else before I ramble on? Like,
I mean, since you did come to the planner, the next question that I've got is if there can be private planner items, as in items that the customer doesn't see.
fantastic question. And yes, there can. So if I create a planner card, you can do it with these ones too, but I'll just do it as an example. So let's say you and your sales buds, account management buds want to throw in some stuff on here, right? I'm going to do just junk. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So let's say you are theoretically scaling up their planner and stuff. Now, obviously the client can see this. There's a whole thing that I'm not going to do for this webinar on like client permission, user permissions that you could change. And you basically CloudRadial is completely modular. You can make it so a user can and see something or cannot see something. But to keep it super simple, when you create a planner card like this, in the settings of that planner card, there is literally an option saying draft, and draft status will not be visible to clients. So when you throw something in draft, like you are planning this for yourself, you can change status information on it, and then it'll just have a little dotted line around it like this. So you as the MSP could see it like back and forth, but they will not be able to if I change it to draft mode. That's all there is to it. Super simple, even though I just changed to proposed. But that's it. So you can see that little dotted line thing, and you can shift it around as you like. You can also, again, not a planner thing, but as you have this discussion, and let's say this is part of your prospecting, and you do want to use this as something that kind of lays out the stuff. If during that conversation, they say like, "Hey, this managed 365, like not interested, no thank you," and you go, "Okay." You can also just right click on these things and move to options. And basically what that does is it's out of their main view, but you still have it logged and notated going like we proposed it, but they said no thank you, it's out of the way. And you can even mark something as declined. So for prospecting purposes, the planner is pretty flexible like that. Kind of goes whatever way you want to. There's not a huge amount of options, but it's also really simple for you guys to collaborate on. Okay. So any other stuff real quick before I talk about some others? All right. So again, as a quick recap, because I know it's getting close to the top of the hour, having CloudRadial spun up, right? Super simple to brand, super simple to add them in. Up to you and how you ultimately want to ingest the information. The rest of the logistics of CloudRadial, typically, this is now I'm talking about complete experience from me to my MSPs. Pen to paper, what does it look like and what do they want to show? So when it comes to a prospect, you want to be able to show again, there's reports working with you super easy. It's super sweet. You have everything, you have your ducks in a row. It looks nice and professional, everything else. Other big things that are nice to show is CloudRadial works in Teams and it has a desktop app. But when it works in Teams and if you hook them up to Microsoft, what that ultimately means is that this thing will open up in Teams and it'll authenticate just fine. Hang on, I'm going to move Todd Frankel's cool GIF out of the way. There you go. And then I can showcase that, click a portal button. It's going to authenticate me and log me in. Boom, done, right? So why this is important is because being able to showcase not only that you have a client experience, but that client experience does not require them to upend and learn anything, gets rid of like a ton of friction. And that's something worth bringing up even during the prospecting phase because you can say like, hey, I'm where you are. You don't need to come to me. I'll come to you. And I'm going to offer you so and so and so and I'm going to inject myself into your day-to-day for your users, for whomever you want to deploy this to, and it'll work nicely. Why that's really good is besides just going, yes, you'll be able to view your VoIP reports or whatever, whenever you feel like, a lot of times MSPs go, well, I want to show the ticketing part because that's usually how they interact with and they start with that support thing. It's not because MSPs love ticketing as much as anybody else, but it's because if you can get the support tickets down, if you can get them to get pre-triaged and stuff through forms, which is kind of one of our flagship things that we're known for, like onboard, offboard forms, then you as the MSP save a bunch of labor, right? You're not pulling teeth to get information back and forth. And then you as the MSP also have all the information to render that ticket faster, so you can resolve it much, much faster. So the benefits of having something hooked up like this that goes directly to the PSA that you have form-based approach is super clear. You put it in Teams and that's really, really nice. So even showcasing this to them and making sure that like, hey, go ahead and give it a shot is really cool. Again, this is more logistics than probably most salespeople have, but if you're technically minded, then you do care about this stuff, which is basically in a traditional CloudRadial deployment, right? So this is when we have a client. If you are hooked up to the PSA, whichever PSA we support, which again, we officially support ConnectWise Manage, Autotask, Kaseya BMS, Halo PSA, and Synchro. We support email connectors too, but you'll see why I bring those PSAs up is you can showcase the stuff, right? You can show all these things. And then what happens is whether they submit a ticket through CloudRadial or whether they just use email and you're trying to get an existing client into a portal, having that PSA connection allows you to see it back and forth like this, right? So they can actually see their open tickets. I'm an admin. They put a lot of tickets under my name, so that's why I have a billion of them. But a normal person would see, a normal amount. And then when they click on ones, right, it would look like a back and forth chat log. That's really cool because you're also showing them that the traditional support experience is for the birds. Like really, even though it sounds cool to email and have a phone call or whatever, realistically, it's really limiting and really slow for both parties. So being able to showcase this, that's pretty nice, right? They have an idea that not only are they getting their reports and their bookmarks and their training and whatever, they have full control over that. That's pretty sexy. Here's the issue. If I try to do that under this theoretical client, I go to support tickets, I go, oh, baby, Ricky, that webinar guy told me how cool this is going to look. Oh man, support ticket's not setting up for this company. What does that mean? If I don't have a PSA to hook up to, we're not a ticketing system as far as like we don't store that data. That's why we hook into PSAs. You don't get that support ticket thing. So if that's an important thing, and if you foresee that being a major thing that you want to showcase to prospects to show them that like the experience is nice, maybe you want to submit a test ticket and walk them through how easy the experience is, you're going to get hit with this if you don't have a PSA uh, company connected. So if you do want to showcase something like this, unfortunately, this comes up all the time as both a feature request and then just logistically, we haven't done it. Just I don't think we've figured out a scalable way to do it. There's not a way for me to spin up a dummy company yet that has a bunch of pre-built tickets and whatnot. So what my MSPs do today is in their PSA, they'll go build a dummy company, fill it with a couple of bogus tickets. Like this is exactly that. Azure Technology is a fictitious MSP. We fill it up with a bunch of stuff and we bomb it to hell with test data. But it still serves that purpose of instead of adding that company or that user manually like we did before, if you can create that bogus company, that MSP, not MSP, that client of an MSP in your PSA, add in that user from the PSA side instead, they will get imported in here. They'll be able to submit tickets. Everything's off to the races. I'll show you what that looks like. Again, it's super simple from a process perspective, but the gist is whether you are wanting to showcase that ticket stuff start to finish, like I just showed you, like this thing, or you want to tack it on later, that process is easier. So a lot of times that comes up going like, okay, so I like what you're showing me. If I choose to move forward with you, what do I do? Well, number one, if you've already given them keys to the kingdom to log in, this is all it is. So you go back to that company, right? We're going to go back to partner and clients. This is our management console right here. Acme Prospect Co. So I could either edit this company, right? Again, we chose not to put in that PSA identifier, which is where those tickets are coming from and what allows them to get submitted to there. So when I do a lookup, this works the same for every PSA connected to CloudRadial. I could initially hook it up, right? This is an alternative to what I showed you guys today. I could hook it up to my bogus company, so like Blank Co, right, is my fictitious one. I could still have it still say Acme Prospect, have their logo, whatever. It's just connected to a PSA to show the tickets and everything else. Or if you want to pre-do it, and this is, again, I've had MSPs all over the map. Some people like to do this, some people don't. You could also pre-create Acme MSP in your PSA, load in a user or two, and then go crazy from there. But either way, that's all this is. So to turn this into a real company from a prospect, is just connecting it to your PSA. If you don't have a PSA and you're just using an email connector, you don't even have to do that, right? Then you basically just set your destination of those tickets to your support desk, like support at yourcompany.com or whatever. But that's it. So from start to finish, again, I'll recap it because I know I'm all over the place. I know it's kind of hard for me to tell this story without going into the nitty-gritty. Blame my current clients for that because they talk about, tell them about this.
We have a couple questions queued up too. I'll let
Let's
you recap first.
okay, I'll do a quick recap because it shouldn't be too bad. So watch this, right? I have 9 minutes before this webinar is theoretically over. So can I get this ready in 9 minutes? I'll do it again, right? Okay, so we're gonna pretend like this time I do have a dummy company. We're gonna say I hooked it up in ConnectWise ahead of time. We're gonna pull in Blank Co or Blue Light. Actually, I'll do Black Rooster. All right. I'm gonna do Acme 2. We don't have to worry about any of this stuff. We don't care. Now, we saw that I did the branding, so we're going to go ahead and just do the branding again. I will do custom branding, otherwise it'll just come with my logo. I like that dark theme. I like that title bar being gray, but feel free to go crazy and do some neon stuff if you're into it. I love that. Acme logo, let's find that. Boom, cool. Copy that, paste. All right. So number one, company has been created. It is currently being populated with all that content, the bookmarks, the training, the support tickets, all that stuff. Only difference is this time I've hooked it up to a PSA. So how is that fundamentally going to change it? We'll see. We're going to give it another couple seconds. That's probably good. When I refresh this, I'm looking for this user number to go up. Why? Because it's connected to a PSA, it should be syncing the actual users. So my dummy company has 4. Awesome. Impersonate as admin. Let's go check that company out. Pretty similar. Acme 2 is created, preloaded with all the content. Love that. Again, you can change that to begin with. When I go to the user list, now we have a bunch of fake users. Cool. I can still add that user manually and it still would work. Why would I want to do that? Because now when they go to support and support tickets, they should be able to see example tickets. They will be able to submit example tickets to get a feel for that experience. Everything else is kind of the same as before. If you want to send an agent out there, you can. When you go back to that screen, again, I'm not going to do it for the sake of time, but you would just take a machine or two, put this agent on there. Again, we have a Mac 1, 2 that fills out their area. When you go to their, oops, so many tabs, you guys. When you go to their compliance stuff, if you want to chuck in some third-party reports, drag and drop, email them in, there you go. And if you really want to go a little extra, which you definitely don't have to, you can fill out the planner stuff, which it's still populating. But that's it. Now, from start to finish, I've got a playground in which I can give them and walk away. Cherry on top, and then Katrina will get to questions because I'm pretty done, is tracking if they're actually using it. Because obviously you're talking to them and like, are they logging in? Did they check it out or whatever? If you want at any given time under this main company view, you can also go to your user list. We can put in our Acme company and then we can actually see if and when somebody accessed it. Now, obviously, nobody did now because I didn't give anybody access to log in, but that means that you as a salesperson, if you have access to CloudRadial, you stage it all up. You can also see when they've interacted with stuff, which makes you fully understand that if they're going back and checking and kicking the tires and whatnot, which is nice because that way you know whether to act on it. That's it in a gist. There's a whole lot more I'm going to talk about at the very, very end about launch resources and how we kind of entice people, but let's get to some questions first before I finish her off. Tell me,
Sounds good. So I had a couple on whether we've got a Google Workspace integration, and if so, what does it look like?
we do not have a Google Workspace integration as far as like what we do with M365. With M365, when we hook it up, it'll actually pull in the users and pull in their data and pull in license information, which I don't even have right here. This is what it looks like with Microsoft, because obviously most MSPs work with Microsoft. So like when it comes to like M365 licenses, who's got what allocated and so on and so forth, not equivalent for Google. The only thing that we have for Google is we support Google sign-on. So if you have that list of companies in the PSA, cool, bring them in. There's no sync with Google like we do with Microsoft, so I can't bring in the users, but I can have them log in. In fact, if I log into Azure Technology log out, you can see that we actually have it enabled. So it's purely on how they access it. If they access it this way, works the same, all their two-factor authentication. In fact, we don't even have user logins because it's based off the user in there. If they have Microsoft or Google, or they just want to use an email link, that's how they get in there. So short answer, no. Long answer, no, but kind of with some users.
Understood. Okay. And then another question I had was, can you restrict who has access to fill out an onboarding/offboarding form?
Excellent question. You sure can. There's an insanity level of nuance you can do there, but simply put, when you look at how any piece of content, whether it's a bookmark or a training course or even tabs inside of CloudRadial, the general gist is when you add it, and you can even see that this will work off the bat here. For Acme 2, I'm going to impersonate a user, and for Acme 2, I'm also going to impersonate an administrator. There's like a user group and company group permission system. So as an admin, when I go to the request service, you see this, add new user, remove user. When I'm a user and I go in there, those are missing. What's the deal? Every single piece of content, you can say, hey, I want this to go to uh, admins, everyone, power users, IT users, you name it. So that thing is super customizable to your needs, for sure.
Okay. And then last question for now in the queue is what is the difference between projects and the planner?
Great question. So projects is whether we connect directly with the PSA projects. For Autotask, BMS, and ConnectWise, we connect directly with them. And if you know what I'm talking about, like there is a project module inside of ConnectWise and BMS, and I think pretty much every PSA has it, but this is just what we pull in for now. It's the actual projects that we're working on plus the project tickets so they get a status and they get to understand like what's going on with all that stuff. So that's pulled directly from the PSA. It's something that just mirrors that in the first place and gets them to understand more like your projects or professional services and whatnot, not the day-to-day ticketing, because technically they're two separate things, which is why projects actually exist down there. The planner specifically is our own thing, and it is literally just a drag and drop, like simple board for like co-op planning. It's just to get a little interactivity. It does not affect anything. Projects can show up on here. We show them as cards if you want to show them, or we can just take them off. But it helps give them a bigger view of like the stuff we talked about, plus the stuff we see in the portal, plus the projects ends up showing them that like just because we may not be bugging you every day, we still have a ton of stuff that we do for you to kind of showcase the value without bothering them. Good question.
And a little follow-up question to that one. Does that pertain only to the PSAs we have listed? I
The
actually
project
can't remember.
specifically?
Yeah, I'm not sure actually.
Yeah, it does. Unfortunately, the project stuff is for the nerds in the crew. It's specifically like the API calls we get from the PSA modules we pull back, whatever response to us. So if we don't have it, I know that like we had some issues with the BMS one. It was like either it's too slow for us to really work with because obviously we have to be fast for it to be a good client experience, or we just haven't gotten around to making it work with. But specifically, yeah, those are related to the PSAs. And those are the ones that we work with specifically. There's not one I'm missing. Those are the three. Any other stuff? Or shall I
I think
showcase
we're
my last little
okay. There was a
ace?
couple of repeat ones, so I just want to make sure that I actually got them.
Of course.
Yep, we're good. So yeah, it was just a couple in the Google Workspace, Project Planner. Yeah, we are good.
All right. Very last thing in the last couple minutes, because again, I know it's a lot because this isn't me lecturing you guys on how to do prospects. Again, I assume most people have some process and they're looking to enhance it. This is how to utilize Cloud Radio to, again, close that time, make it an easier baton pass to future departments, future people, from again sales to onboarding to support to QBRs and account management and stuff. And I just want to point out that like we put a bunch of work not just into putting this portal out, making it user friendly and whatnot, even from deployment resources, because then you run into like how do you actually get this out the door? There's even stuff that we just put out, like everything from if you see a prospect that is struggling with, let's say there's a specific thing, right? I don't know what it could be, but let's say like you know that you're going to hit them hard on this pain you've identified with their onboarding, or they really want training, whatever. There's a bunch of free resources that with Cloud Radio you can say like, hey, here you go, trackable resources, productivity, whatever. So you can kind of get off the ground faster, even from the prospecting experience that you can customize pretty easily. So like we throw them up in Canva, but obviously do whatever, throw your logo, change some stuff, and there's a bunch more, even down to if you're trying to kind of do what I'm doing and you want to give a demonstration and you want to simplify or scale your process, record yourself saying what it would look like once. I have everything from the demo script to even more like email templates and stuff. So the point is not to say, hey, go review all this stuff. It's to say that when you think about using Cloud Radio for prospecting, you've got stuff from the how to do it tangibly like this, all the way down to how you get it out, who do you talk to, what resources do you give them, and suggestions on what we've seen work. So there you go. I will say for my closing slide. So my boss does not say, hey, you forgot to sell CloudRadial. Whoops. If you're looking for a demo and you actually want to see what it can do for you and you have questions aside from prospecting on capabilities that may help you in any facet from prospecting into support and so on, just hit up radios.io/demo or just scan that QR code and then we'll walk you through any specific logistics. Happy to. I think that's cue for me to drink a glass of water and shut up for a little bit, which is pretty good. What do you think?
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And thank you to everyone for the great questions. And you can look for a follow-up email in the next 24 hours that'll have a recording of this.
Sweet.
And feel free to reach out if you have any questions.
Yeah, if you guys have stuff, sales or not, about CloudRadial or just in general, I don't know. I can ask stuff. I'm not as ChatGPT, but just hit me up. I'll answer. I'll try. See what I can do. All right. Thanks, guys. I'll catch you
Thank
later.
you. Bye.